2025 is right around the corner, but instead of thinking, oh, what is 2025 going to be like for digital marketing, or what changes are going to happen next year, let's think 5 years ahead to 2030. Let's think of some 2030 digital marketing predictions. And then we cut into the title screen, which may or may not happen. So if I apologize if I haven't come up with one yet, Zoe will just put something here. Done. So as I said in the opener, we are going to be discussing 3 top digital marketing predictions of myself, the video confidence coach, here in November, December, whenever I release this, in 2024. So in 3 years, it's going to be, sorry, not 3 years, 5 years, it's going to be 2029, and it's going to be right around the corner for 2030. There are so many things with that particular year or number. There's a lot of really big changes in the world that are due to happen around 2030, and there's a lot of things that hopefully by then will have changed in my life, and hopefully yours too, that will impact all of us. But today I wanted to discuss a couple of things or trends that I've been seeing over the past couple of years, and I would love, hopefully, that I can look back around 2029 or 2030 and look back at these predictions and see how well I could predict them. And if I have not predicted them well, please, future Zoe, be kind. I don't know. I don't know if we did well or not. But the 3 things that I want to predict, and of course, as all predictions are, these are based on my own observations and my own thoughts, and a couple of them are fairly wide and loose as well, so do not worry if they're not as concrete as I would like them to be. They are for the episode today. The predictions themselves will be the rise of internet privacy and the ubiquity of siloed forums and private groups, the human factor first, the MLLs, AI, will be every day and everywhere. So it will become more ubiquitous within digital marketing spaces, as it already is now, but even more so. And AI art will become passé and tired. I already feel like this is the case, but I digress. I will go into it more in today's podcast episode. And the third thing that will definitely affect digital marketing predictions, but this is pretty much a worldwide thing, to be perfectly honest. Wind and solar power will become a standard when purchasing, and it's not just a power, but it will be touching absolutely everything. And I will go into that later in today's podcast. So make sure you listen to actually everything that we have on today's episode. So going back to my first prediction regarding the rise of internet privacy and the ubiquity of siloed forums and private groups. So what does that mean, Zoe? So as you can imagine, over the past decade, there's been a lot of changes regarding internet. Internet pickup and usage has become a lot more prevalent around my area and also throughout the world. Of course, there are very large sections that are still not access or have consistent access to the internet, but to the point where governments are pushing anything and services through the internet most of the time, you can understand the ubiquity has become quite consistent. And hopefully that will mean that there will be more focus on making sure that the internet is on a decent standard for everyone, especially in Australia. Now, of course, I'm talking about Australia and my region, my neck of the woods, when I'm making these particular predictions. But the internet is worldwide. That's the thing. Everything is everywhere. And that is a bit of the problem. So the rise of internet privacy. Over the past 10 years, we've definitely seen a lot more of the negatives when it comes to putting your face online. This goes for people who are running personal brands and businesses like ourselves, as well as just the everyday person. And there has been a very large, and I think we'll continue to see a trend, a very large retreat of putting your face, your name, your interests, your likes publicly online. There will be more calls for internet privacy over this period of time. It's already happening now, but it's going to definitely be kicking off. And I think by 2030, it will become the norm. And I say this because even though I put my face out there and I put my name out there and I want to grow my personal brand, I still want the right to privacy. And I still want the right to not have random people show up at my house or to not have my identity stolen, preferably. I mean, like, really, what are you going to steal? Best of luck to you. So when it comes to that internet privacy, that trend will continue to grow, especially when it comes to the GDP, GDP. I've forgotten what it stands for, and I apologize. You will see it on screen when I edit it. GDP is essentially what is the European Union has been impacting heavily over the internet regarding marketing endeavors, including email marketing, but also like any work that you do regarding marketing in the European Union. And in turn, as you can imagine, when a standard is set in something as large as Europe, most of the internet, or the global internet, kind of falls into place just kind of happenstancely, because there are so many people and so much power within the GDP, within the European Union itself. Therefore, that kind of trickles down when it comes to the internet way of doing things. And those, over the past, realistically, 6 to 8 years, there's been a very big push when it comes to privacy. So there has been, ever since the internet was created, bigger players on the global scale have been collecting data, just constantly collecting data, servers and servers of data, like they're just constantly collecting data. And for a while, most of us didn't know what that was for. Like, yes, it was to maybe make business decisions, possibly, but it wasn't exactly clear what this data was used for. And then the ubiquity of the next thing that we'll be talking about, and the next topic we'll be talking about, the rise of multi-language learning models, MLLs. That's what the data is being used for. The data that they're collecting on us for over, I'd say, in some places 20 years, but in places more like 10 to 12. All that data is being now used to feed these chatbots and AIs that they can use to do whatever they need to do. And in turn, that has meant, back onto what we're talking about today, the specific subject, is that people are bringing back their data and bringing back their privacy because they know how much it's worth. They know how much their data and their knowledge about themselves and their habits is worth to these big companies. And therefore, that is no longer going to be freely given as well as it has been in the past. So internet privacy is going to become a much bigger aspect when it comes to online play and that work that you do online. And what I mean by the ubiquity of siloed forums and private groups is places like Facebook groups. Kind of. Facebook, I think, is going a little bit faster downhill than they would like, which is why Threads exists now. But I digress. Places like Facebook groups, Discord, WhatsApp, Slack, Reddit, Mastodon, all of these platforms that have individual silos for groups around specific interests, specific political factions. Like, all of these individual groups, that they've already existed, and they have always existed in the background of digital marketing efforts. Now those, over the next 5 years, I believe and predict that they are going to become more into the front of strategies, but also just how people get more information. I'd say a lot of people are on WhatsApp groups, are on Telegram groups, are like, yes, people that they've met in real life, but also there's plenty of groups that people are online, for better or for worse, usually worse, mind you, that are purely online. They've never met any of these people in real life. And these groups, I think, are going to become a lot more standard when it comes to digital marketing practices. People are going to be in these groups that are focusing on their interests and what they actually want to do, and we're going to become very forum reliant, like we were back in the earlier days of the internet. Because we did not have social media platforms that made everything accessible to everyone. We're going to close those doors back. Now, of course, we can't fully close them back because the cat's out of the bag. The piglet has run around. We're not getting them back in the bag. And definitely with the social media platforms, they're going to try and fight against this. But I think instinctively, there's going to be a lot more of the rise of those. When I say siloed forums, I mean forums of, yes, they probably will interact with other groups and other people, but they're going to be very not necessarily publicly available. You would have to request to join these groups. You would have to, make an account on these platforms, show some sort of credentials, be it, you've been on the platform for more than 2 weeks, or you've maybe got your name or some sort of factor that will allow you access to these groups and therefore access to these places where people are having the discussions that they are focusing on. And we're going to be moving away quite heavily, I think, over the next 5 years from performative socials and more to human connection. Now, of course, this is online and digitally based, so there's only so much human connection you can possibly have. But what that means by then is that there's just going to be a lot more focus on how a brand, which may have one person, which may have hundreds of people, reacts to cultural events. That's already happening now. But in these siloed environments, in these various environments where people may be, and I think selling will definitely take place. It's, the law of the internet, there's always going to be advertising. But it's going to be very different. The people are going to be using their employees a lot more. There's going to be a lot more of that human face in front of the work that they do. Yes, that already happens now, but it's going to be even more prevalent, again, in these siloed environments. And what does this mean for you and your business? As you can probably imagine, Zoe, what the hell does this even mean? So I think for those who are listening now, and maybe not in 2030, if it's 2030, you might be a little bit late by now, but if you're watching or listening in 2025, I think knowing your customer and having a customer avatar or a really clear idea will be crucial for both utilizing with tools such as AI and the MLLs of the world. Again, I will get to that in a second. But also having just a really clear idea of who the type of person you want to focus on. So when it comes to getting access to these siloed environments, you are doing the right thing, or at least have the right direction of the people who are interested in buying from you. Because again, these siloed environments are going to grow in the amount and the sizes of them. So in turn, you need to make sure that you're in the right groups to actually see and talk to people who are going to buy from you. That is why it's important to know your customer and get them to like you through these platforms. Having multi-channel marketing channels, both in digital and in person, is going to be crucial. Down here in the local sphere in Geelong, I have seen a much more bigger uptick in in-person marketing. We're talking flyers, brochures, magnets, business cards, all the even billboards. There is a company down here called Gawk, and throughout Victoria, by the way, who are doing digital billboards. Yes, digital billboards have always been there. Well, not always been there, but they've definitely grown over the past 20 years. And in turn, billboards are coming back with a vengeance. And in turn, that will mean that your ways of marketing your business will be split even more than they already are. So over these next couple of years, having a clear idea of who you're talking to will then definitely dictate those multi-channel marketing efforts that you're doing in both digital and in-person methods. Building and leading groups is now going to be more important than ever. If you have a Facebook group that is dead in the water and you haven't done anything with, think about reviving it and think about an actual strategy that will get people back on board. Maybe moving to a different platform might be the right thing to do. And I just think over these next 5 years, that's going to be more important than ever. Having a group of dedicated people, not necessarily buying from you straight away, but to have that community there as this, as everything grows and moves towards this siloed forum way of the internet, I think is going to be very crucial over those next 5 years. And the last thing I'll mention on this particular topic is building your email lists. Building email lists will be very important. And it has always been, and especially over the past 5 years, I have been crying to people out to make sure you build your email lists. And it's going to be more important than ever over these next 5 years as people move away, and they already are. Already moving away from these large social media platforms because of just the communities and the anger that it fosters. And as we do so, email marketing will become more important as one of those multi-marketing channels. So 2030 me, how did it go? Yay, nay? Did the world blow up? Let me know. Okay, so the other factors that I want to talk about today are so currently in the world, we collectively call multi-language learning, apps and tools as collectively as AI. Now, for those who may not know, it's not actually AI. It's not thinking for itself. It's just using a bunch of data, ones and zeros, to output an outcome that is in a text form, which for some tools then turns it into either a still picture or like 2 to 5 seconds worth of video. And that's where we get the uncanny video that's a bit weird. And the more data that they feed these tools, the better, and I use very big air quotes there, the better it will become. And I'm going to say that in 5 years, that these MLLs, as they're called now, I'm sure we'll come up with a catchier term probably within the next 5 years, Zoe, they will become everyday and everywhere. Because at the moment, they are definitely used, and in a lot of digital marketing, they are used. If you are running a business in 2025, you're probably using some sort of AI tool, or at least some AI assisted tool, at least in somewhere in your, in your supply chain, in the way that you create content, in the way that you market yourself, you're using AI at some point. This will become just an everyday thing. And I think this will become a lot more obvious to be able to spot just by looking at text when something has been generated using one of these tools. And I'll go on a little bit further what I mean by that. And the other thing that I want to predict is that AI art, so again, we're talking about tools that are using data scraped illegally off the internet from people without their permission, is the art style that it produces is going to become very passé and tired in the next 5 years. To be honest, as someone who is on the internet, I'm already over it. But in the next 5 years, it will become incredibly dated. Not just because these tools will, again, continue to be fed more data, but will also have different styles. Because the way, and I'll mention this now to my listeners and watchers, is that the images, specifically images, the video, it's not really quite there yet, but it will eventually get there. It also just doesn't know what consistency is, so there's that. Is that when you can tell that an image is AI, not necessarily just because looking at the fingers, because that will change over time, is seeing that the contrast points, so from the lightest to the darkest shade of the image, are white and black, like are very clearly, like there's no gray. Everything is very highly contrast and highly stylized because it's given to a computer. It's not given to a human at the end of the day who can see the many shades of gray, not 50, even more than that. And obviously, the more data that especially these large conglomerate capitalistic companies will continue to push into these, AI resource generated things, who are taking a lot of energy, by the way, they're going to produce the same thing because, again, they are just pixels. They are just a computer at the end of the day. You can also tell something is AI via the proportions. Even if something is supposed to be stylistic and not supposed to have consistent proportions, you are still going to run into that issue where you're able to clearly see I'm just going to pause that for a moment. Thank you. You're going to be able to clearly see the different situation regarding the different points of contrast, as I mentioned before, but also it's going to be quite obvious and it's going to be very passé. Because at the moment, a lot of older people that I work with don't mind AI. They think, oh, it's pretty. Oh, it's nice to look at. It's nice. It's going to become boring. It's going to become old fast, and human artists are still going to be needed. People who are cheap are still going to use AI at the end of the day. And I have played around with a couple of these tools, and we're still in the infancy in 2025. Obviously, it's been available to the public, air quotes there, since, thank you, internet, since 2022. It's been publicly available. And then it's just continually growing until now in 2025. And then by the time we hit 2030, I believe that it will become just very obviously in basic, and we'll want to see something new. We'll want to see new and innovative things that interest us, new styles. Because of course, we are humans, we want novelty, and AI is just the mashup, computer mashup of everything else. It is so boring. So that's going to become very passé over time. The things that I will predict by 2030 is that AI art controversies will continue to grow, like will become even more plethora than they are now. As you can probably imagine, everyone's getting quite sick of them as they are, and they will continue to steal and grow. But with the rise of tools that can poison these databases and turn what a computer thinks is a cat into a shoe, this will definitely, taint the data, and there will be a lot more controversies revolving around that. Highly recommend you look into that if you are an artist yourself. Protect yourself. And you're putting your art online, I must say. And I think over time, especially by the time we hit 2030, people will become more intrinsically aware when an image, when text, when a video has been AI generated. And there's still going to be a fairly vocal minority, I should say, of people who are going to believe everything that they see. I don't think that's going to be everyone. And there are still going to be controversies. There's going to be even more. But hopefully by 2030, the world hasn't entirely broken in half by that mentality. Like, we'll innately get to a point where we can watch a video and humanly discern a little bit of like, hey, I don't entirely trust this. We'll have tools by then to be able to run it through that and go, okay, is this AI or not? Or is this human? Cool. We'll make a decision from there. And in turn, we will seek novelty a lot more than we already do. We won't like to deal with complacency as much when it comes to our digital marketing, and especially our creative, because if we've seen it before, AI can do it. I don't care. I want to see what a human can do. I also predict by 2030 that the government policies that will be in place will be at the point, hopefully, on a global scale, that will limit or refine training models. So again, the data that people are collecting and have been hoarding for years, that they put into these machines that then create the output, they will be limited and restricted due to governmental policies. And also, this also includes the copyright when it comes to AI training data and draining data sets. I believe that there will be some government policies regarding around that. I have no idea what they're going to be, but I can imagine they're going to be somewhat either loose or strict. Either way, it's never going to be the right thing to do. It's always going to be one extreme or the other. And yeah, just being able to get the government, and I'm not saying that the government's going to fix everything. It's probably going to ruin things, to be honest. And feel free to nod along if that is the case, Zoe. But just having something by the time we hit 2030. Or I could be completely wrong and the government doesn't do shit. There's also that. And then the last thing that I want to mention before I go into what this means now for people in 2025, is that we'll actually have the rise of actual AI, not just these predictive text from your phone that you can get just on steroids. I mean actual artificial intelligence that is going to be utilized probably, let's face it, within the military, because that's where the money is going, but then slowly trickling down to us. And from there, I would like to see that. Now, of course, it's terrifying, as you can imagine. Something that is, so with the actual rise of artificial intelligence, that's an entire series on its own. But hopefully by 2030, we'll see the beginnings of that. I don't think we'll see a fully fledged thing, but we'll start to see the beginnings of that as the data is inputted and refined. From, again, these places that have a lot of data, because of course they have all the money. Now, for those of us who are in 2025, what can we do with this prediction and this knowledge, or possible future, in mind regarding MLLs, AI, and artificial intelligence? You can start learning the basics of prompt engineering. Not to be an entire job. I want to stress, for all of those companies that are hiring prompt engineers as a job, you are stupid. I say that now and in the future. Having your entire job be a prompt engineer is going to not be useful as a job. It's going to be a skill set of everyone's job. To be able to prompt a larger, bigger intelligence than you in a database that has either been created by a company that you're in, or maybe your own, to be able to have something that you can use to make sure you get what you want out of it, and in the least amount of energy used to get that prompt out that you want. That is something that's going to be, I think, a useful skill over the next 5 years. So look into, AI prompt engineering. You don't need to take a course, just brush up on a couple of skills. I highly recommend a couple of Jeffsu, so Geffsu, who's on YouTube. He's got a lot of good stuff. And he has a basic video, I think it's like 10 minutes long, on prompt engineering. And I highly recommend that for yourself if you are interested in prompt engineering and, again, preparing for this 2030 future. The other thing that I'm going to mention for us that are in 2025 is playtesting your minimum viable products with computers and with your artificial intelligences before you move into real person testing and launching with other, clients or customers or other business owners. What I mean by this, now I may have just thrown a lot of words at you if you aren't unfamiliar with any of those terms, but essentially you're able to test your ideas, your unique ideas and products and services and what have you, with a computer, with an AI that can give you objective and feedback, and build up both your internal confidence, but also the confidence of your staff or the confidence of what you're actually producing, and test it with a computer a lot more before launching it with humans and getting their feedback before eventually taking it to market. That's already what's kind of happening in the background now on a very small scale. That's going to become a lot larger as these data sets grow over time. And the reason that I mention that is because this will then very much dictate the type of products and services that are going to be coming out, because these larger companies are going to do this. They are going to test their ideas on these computers first before they start bringing it out to humans. So the computers are going to dictate whether something actually comes out or not. So now, of course, you can always test this. You can always change things as we grow. As an online community and in your digital marketing space. But just to have something, not a human, just something look over your work, even give you some pointers, not to fully change things, mind you, but just to give you some rounding of the edges, I think is actually going to be useful for us. When it starts dictating the entire final output, then that's not exactly what I would like. And there's going to be, of course, people who just want the easiest, cheapest way of getting something out there. They're going to use that. That's going to happen. But when it comes to actually putting something good out into the world, having that confidence that, the computer says, hey, I'm not going to blow up the sun with this idea. Okay, I can do this. And that will give you the confidence to then reach out to human beings, which are a lot more flexible. So moving on from AIs to the last point that I wanted to bring in to our podcast today. And this may seem very Zoe, and very nebulous, but this will impact your digital marketing in 2030. I guarantee it. And this thing is solar and wind power will become the standard when purchasing. And I don't mean just when it comes to power. I mean everything. So what I mean by this is that in digital marketing, you are a business who wants people to come in as leads, purchase either a product or a service, and then either stay as a subscription. Hopefully, honestly, another prediction I have, Zoe, hopefully by now, subscription models will have succeeded, or at least only be used when it's necessary. Because I was definitely doing a lot of my initial training when I first started my business around subscription models. And they were very much pushed by a lot of the trainers and a lot of the people talking about business, is that you should get people on a subscription model. Like that's the goal, that's the goal, that's the goal. And then look here, 10 years later, it has become the goal and everyone hates it. So hopefully that has changed by 2030. Feel free to laugh at me, that's not the case, Zoe. But again, back to solar and wind power. Because, of course, powering the internet, powering our computers, powering everything is really important. It's crucial. Governments are made and breaked by this, especially in Australia. So when it comes to digital marketing and the work that you're going to do, as a business, you're going to need to be conscious of how your products, be them digital or physically, are made, how your services are conducted. Being more transparent than ever, I think, is going to become the norm when it comes to the work that you do, when it comes to digital marketing. And I'm not just focusing on like the actual power of it, I'm focusing on as consumers. So in this world, we are all consumers of something. I doubt that you have not consumed something today. And the world has become more conscious as consumers, and that will definitely grow by 2030 to the point where we will get to the point where everyone, not that you know, but it's easier to understand where a business comes from, where their supply chains, both physical and digital, because right now there's a lot of unclear understanding of where a lot of digital products come from, or the amount of time and effort it took, or the products or tools used to create the digital product. I believe that is actually going to become quite transparent by 2030. And if I'm wrong, feel free to laugh at me, Zoe. That by that point, we need to be able to be transparent about how things are created, what is created, and how much energy has been taken to create that product. Now, of course, I'm not expecting people to have like full-on meters of, like little gas meters or those little meters that say, hey, it's taken this much power, or it's taken 3 days worth of power to create this tool for you, or what have you. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying to have a really transparent supply chain is what is going to happen. And again, we can already see that in the conscious consumer markets of physical products, especially with businesses that are really pushing the green agenda, be them actually helping the environment or not, you decide. That with that is going to then transfer into digital marketing and digital products as well. I think that is just inevitable. The people are going to be more conscious of where this information has been sourced from. Has it been sourced from AI? Has it been sourced from human beings that you're employed to? Has this, information, been taken legally or illegally from the data that you have collected on your customers? I think that's definitely going to be happening over the next 5 years, and that's going to become more important over time. And the things for those of us who are in 2025, the things that we need to think about when it comes to digital marketing and everything that I mentioned so far regarding solar and wind power or other alternative forms of power, as I've mentioned. There is a lot of wind and there's a lot of solar down here in Australia, so it's kind of what I'm focusing on. But of course, there are other alternative power options. What we can do in 2025 is invest in a transparent supply chain for both our digital and physical products and services, being able to clearly articulate and clearly market ourselves on those transparent values when it comes to supply chains. So being able to invest in those, like when you're making decisions, to be able to think of both the marketing potential of the decisions that you make to invest in certain areas of your supply chain, and actually if that can be used as a marketing opportunity for yourself. Because again, that will be used to then transparently showcase to people, hey, we are doing this because we, get our internet from a local supplier of internet down here in the Geelong region, pushing that green agenda, for example. Another example that I have is that, for example, producing either a digital product and you say, this digital product has been created from my mind and has taken and took me, 3 days of power to create, like something like that. So to be able to showcase, again, the tools, not necessarily the tools used, because of course people are allowed to have their anonymity when making products or services online, but that will become more transparent over time because it will just become part of the norm, I believe, in the way that you market yourself and your business in the digital space, because that's what we're talking about today. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about regarding this is making sure that in 2025 and beyond, over the next 5 years, is that you find alternatives to everything. I'm not just talking about your supply chains. I'm not just talking about, when it comes to decisions that you make regarding marketing your business. Make sure that for every single tool you use, you have at least one alternative. However you get your power, make sure you have alternatives that you can quite easily and quite quickly, like you've got their number, you've got it written down, you've got some sort of, when the shit hits the fan book, here, use this to find alternatives. Because I think that is what is going to be happening very effectively over the next 5 years, is that there are going to be major changes and major shakeups. And if people who are too slow to move are going to be heavily impacted. So making sure that you have those alternatives in all aspects of your business, or at least know of them, or in my case, have a list of whenever I come across something like, hey, this is kind of like the tool that I use, but it's cheaper, more efficient, and better. Put that on the list. Make sure to check it in a month. Okay, I'll do that. So again, finding alternatives, because even though something may be working now, it's not always going to be working. So having those alternatives in place. So those are the things that I would like to predict for 2020-30. Feel free, future Zoe, if I have done a great job or a bad job, feel free to let me know. The hopes that I have, so these are not exactly predictions, but like hopes that I would like when it comes to the digital marketing space, is that, and subsequently the things that will be impacting the digital marketing space over the next 5 years, I hope that more people are working from home, are having their life fit their work, are having work fit their life and not life fit their work. Because hopefully over the next 5 years, a lot of those people who have that mentality, especially in the C-suite managers, sub-managers, regional managers of the world, are going to either retire or be close to retiring. And phasing out that mentality as Gen Z and the younger Gen and Gen Alpha possibly. And again, generations are economic terms. They are not fully describing of people. Just remember that. So we bring those in, and more of those people are in the workplace where what you do for work should not be your entire definement of you, and nor should it ever be. So that having more people work from home, I really hope is going to become the norm, which then will impact how people are consuming, the marketing that you are providing, again, in those silo channels, but also how people are just going to be consuming marketing in general. I think, and I hope there's going to be more stages and pieces of quiet for people to be able to think without being constantly bombarded with ads. I hope that. In turn of everything that I just mentioned before, I hope that flexible working hours will become the norm, especially for businesses and for companies where it's not life or death. You work in a, financial advisory firm, mate. Like, just chill, and be able to work flexibly around your life. Again, having work fit your life and not the other way around. The last thing that I would like to hope for by 2030 is that there are and again, this is a really big hope I want to stress, is that there is some sort of plateau of growth when it comes to this constant need for capitalism, what we're in, is that this constant need for growth, constant need to cut. And that's the reason that this is my theory, is that the reason that we've had this public push of AI and scaring of people in their jobs is because these larger companies have cut all costs absolutely everywhere else. And they're starting to cut labor costs because that's the only thing that they can have control over to cut in regards to costs, which has interminably meant that things are not getting checked, things are becoming more unsafe, and the world is becoming less safer to be in because of these labor cuts and labor, this constant need for growth, this constant need for return, this constant need for profit from your investment. And AI has been used both as a scare tactic to keep people on board, like, AI is going to take your job. And I'm not saying that war is unfair, I'm not saying that thought is unfounded. I can definitely understand where you're coming from. Over the next 5 years, that may definitely be the case. But AI is to take the grudge work, is to take the work that no one wants to do. Then people will need to be more skilled. And having, like, for example, I was talking a couple of months ago with a friend of mine who works in the plumbing industry, and they were worried about, robots taking their jobs. And I said, by the time that we retire, in 50 years from now, to be perfectly honest, that you're going to have maybe a robot helper who can do the heavy lifting and physical load work for you, but you're still going to need to use your brain because you're in the real world. They're computers. They don't know what they're doing. And over the next 5 years, I think that will definitely start coming into play. I don't think it's going to be into fruition, but over the next 5 years, that will come into play. And I believe that what I would love to see, and as I said, this is in the hope section of my predictions, is that there's going to be some plateau of growth, and there's going to be that human aspect coming through of just, we're okay. We don't constantly need to grow, right? We can just chill. I doubt that's going to happen. That's why it's a hope and not a prediction, Zoe. But when it comes to, and the tech bros just calming down for a second would be nice, to be perfectly honest. But when it comes to 2030, I look in 5 years from now with both immense fear and trepidation, but also hope. I hope that by the time we reach this point, 2030, that we will have done a lot better than we have. That the pandemic will be long behind us and we will be in a space of more prosperity and things will change in digital marketing. There's no doubt about it. But to be able to have a more human-centric approach in the world is what I would like to see when it comes to digital marketing. So thank you for enjoying my little spiel, and I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode. Like I said, in 5 years, I will check back in on myself and my notes, and we can definitely see how we went with our predictions. Yay, nay, feel free to give me your score, future Zoe. And in the meantime, I would love to hear from you. Make sure you comment below or you reach out to me on my website, vcc.training, where you can find more of these podcasts and everything else regarding the projects that we do at the Video Confidence Coach. Look forward to seeing you next week and wish you all the best with your plans for 2025 and 2030. Bye.